against Bitcoin.
It's going up forever.
You're against Bitcoin, you're against freedom.
Yo, welcome to another episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. We are your number one source for the peaceful Bitcoin revolution. We cover breaking news, culture, and dramatic warfare. We will be your guide through the separation of money and state. Speaking of the separation of money and state, crazy news coming out of the United Kingdom. I kid you not. You literally cannot make this up if you tried. By January 6th, every UK citizen will have to take a test to buy Bitcoin. It is a 6-page quiz that will not be easy and is designed to give you to give up. If you pass, there will be a 48-hour cooling period before you can actually buy. And that was a tweet from Youssef, and he was the original founder of Paxful, which I think he stepped away from. But that is absolutely crazy. And again, it really reminds me of the book, The Sovereign Individual, where they were making the case that governments would try to do everything in their power to basically stop people from opting out of their money. And then this is also something happening in the United States. We have an update for you guys as well. Elizabeth Warren is using the, how do I say this in a politically correct way? Elizabeth Warren is using the conflict in the Middle East in order to gather support for her bill, her bipartisan bill with Senator Marshall, which would be, according to Pierre Richard, a de facto ban on Bitcoin mining within the United States. And also it would essentially force wallet providers, software wallet providers, hardware wallet manufacturers, basically they would have to KYC, right? Because they don't want people to, use, quote unquote, use their words, unhosted wallets, meaning wallets that are outside of their control. So, we say it in the beginning of the show, this is the separation of money and state after all. And, those governments are just not going to go gently into that good night. And again, when I say governments, it's not that it's going to make the government go away, because I think that's a lot of the, a lot of the narrative, a lot of the rhetoric that they used. It's just that governments, the relationship between the citizen, the individual, and the state is going to change once you separate money from state, right? Right now, the way that it's structured is we live in a misaligned incentive political structure. Why? Because politicians, when they get elected, they're really incentivized to hold on to that money printer. They're really incentivized to get as close as humanly possible to that money printer. That's the money spigot, right? But you have to understand something about government, right? Government is supposed to be by the people, for the people. And I think the ability that fiat has given governments is that they no longer have to do good by their constituents in order to get funding. What they really have to do is just protect that moat, right? So it's really become a government by the government for the government. If and when we separate money from state, I truly believe as a Bitcoiner that we will be successful in doing so, because I think Bitcoin's incentives are stronger than any coercion they might throw at us. I think that the whole dynamic changes. And I think El Salvador is a great example of that. I don't think it's a coincidence that in the society where they fixed the base layer, they made Bitcoin legal tender, for some reason, that politician who's in office is actually doing the things that he said he was going to do if he were elected. And why is that? Because without their ability to print money, the only way for governments to raise money is through direct taxation. And if you want to tax your populace more money, right, you have to actually do good by your constituents, right? So it's just interesting, this phenomenon. And I don't think we've ever lived in a world in human history where the money was separated from the state, from the sovereign, right? This is the debasement of currency is something that has literally it's been around since the Roman times. The Romans did the same exact thing, like over the decades, over, hundreds of years of Roman history, when it became from a Roman Republic to the Roman Empire, to the division of the Roman Empire, to the Western Roman Empire, to the Eastern Roman Empire. You know what they did? They debased the currency. Now, it's not like printing money like it is today, but they had a currency called the denarius. And you could literally see over time that the percentage of silver in the denarius declined over time. And with that declined, you had the moral decay and the eventual collapse of the Roman Empire, right? So are we living through those times? I mean, you start to see the moral decay in society. You start to see the corruption right up in your grill, in your face. So I truly believe we're living through this pivotal moment in history. Now, what is different than every other moment in history is that this time we have a non-state currency. And because of Bitcoin's true decentralization, only Bitcoin has that. Governments are essentially, it's a forcing function. They're forced to compete with Bitcoin. They're forced to say, okay, this is why you should use our currency. And here's the thing, I don't think they'll be able to win that, because governments are always going to want to do two things. They're always going to want to debase their currencies, because that's how they pay for the deficit spending. That's how they pay for things they can't afford. And they're always going to want to control and censor the money flows. And those are two things that Bitcoin does not, right? There's 21 million. There will only ever be 21 million. And Bitcoin is censorship resistant. So I think Bitcoin's incentives are superior to state money. And again, once again, I'm going to mention this book because every Bitcoiner should read this book. This is a theory that was predicted back in the 90s in the book, The Sovereign Individual, right? Crazy, crazy times. Buckle in, take your Bitcoin into self-custody. No more delay. Let's bring up my legendary co-host. Has a smile on his face once again. My brother, my co-host, the one, the only. He has dated 3 central bankers: Augustin Carson, Christine Lagarde, and Janet Yellen, the legendary Optimus Fields.
Wait, did we drop that meme yesterday? I don't think we dropped that.
We haven't
meme.
dropped that meme.
Okay,
But I don't know if we should. Maybe we should just show it on the show.
Okay, I'll download it. I'll put it in a meme review. Anyways, I just wanted to mention, 3 minutes in and we're already talking about the Roman Empire, men talking about the Roman Empire again. Couldn't make up.
I didn't even realize I did that.
But hey, we'll get into the news portion of the UK, but just the troll start of the show. UK just wants its citizens to have fun staying poor. Couldn't make up. But yeah, man, crazy stuff. Anyways, let's bring in our guests. Let's start the show. What's up, Bill? Great to have you. Actually, could you tell everyone what you told us before the show, that we helped orange pill you? Would just absolutely honored, bro.
First of all, Bill, who are you, bro? What's up?
Hey, so I'm Bill Stebbins. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel. I was in the Army 23 years. And so what we were talking about before the show started was that this show, Simply Bitcoin, you guys were instrumental in orange pilling me. You were, and you don't realize probably the impact that you have on so many folks that you just don't even know about. But I'm one of those folks. I started hearing about Bitcoin, and I found your show, kept listening to it. You orange pilled me.
Man,
love to hear it.
First of all, I just got to say, bro, that's an absolute honor.
Yeah.
Really, it is so amazing to hear that. Opti and I talk about this all the time. What we see is we see numbers on the screen. Right. So we see, there's 300 people watching live, 200 people watching live, 6,000, 7,000 plays and listens per episode. Sometimes even 15, but we don't actually see the faces. Like, who are those 15,000 people? Who are those 7,000 people that are watching our show? Right. We don't know. Right. So, for you to tell that to us is extremely inspiring and extremely humbling. And Bill, I'm honestly speechless, and thank you so much for your kind words.
Well, they're not kind. I'm just saying it as they are. No platitudes there. You're fulfilling the role, providing that information, that orange signal that people need, because you don't understand it the first 3 hours you hear about Bitcoin. You don't understand it the first week you hear about it. It takes time, and you guys keep coming again and again, kind of like a spider monkey on a mango. You just keep bringing the signal, and it gets people to understand.
Yeah, man,
Love it, bro. Appreciate it.
we are, you know, we take the ethos of Bitcoin, we embody it. We are the Honey Badger Media. We don't stop. And guys, if you're enjoying the show right now, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that like button. Really helps with the YouTube algorithms. And also you can find us on alternative video platforms like Rumble. Our Rumble audience is growing like crazy. We appreciate all you watching us on Rumble. If you can't find us on YouTube for whatever reason, God forbid, you could find us on Rumble. And you can find us on Twitter as well. We're always live streaming the shows there. So yeah, it's going to be a great show. We have a ton to talk about today, ladies and gentlemen. Let's jump straight into it. Let's do this.
The Bitcoin numbers.
Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Is your seed phrase really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of just writing them on paper. Don't store your generational wealth on paper. Paper is prone to water damage, fire damage. You want to put your generational wealth on one of the strongest metals on planet Earth, titanium. Your words are actually stamped into this metal plate with this hammer and these letter stamps. And once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamped seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They're also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin with peace of mind for the long haul. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed. All right, guys, I made it super easy for you guys. We talk about Bitcoin all the time, and you want to make it over the finish line with your generational wealth. You want to pass that on to the future generations, to your children. So that's why you don't want to store your Bitcoin wallet backup seed words on paper. You want to store it on one of the strongest metals on planet Earth, titanium. So scan the QR code on your screen, take you directly to the Stamp Seed website where you can get yourself a Stamp Seed Titanium Seed Storage Kit. You can use the promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the Stamp Seed website. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump straight into today's numbers. Gemini gets sued and Bitcoin pumps, but Opti's like, that's not a pump. But anyways.
What is this, a pump for ants?
Pump for ants. Bitcoin price at the time of recording, 28,760 sats per dollar, 3,477 block height, 812,938 blocks to halving, 27,062 halving estimate, April 21st, 2024. Total Lightning Network capacity, 5,370 Bitcoin. Capacity value, 154 million US dollars. Realized monetary inflation rate, 1.74%. The market capitalization of Bitcoin, $561 billion with the B. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 4.3%. In the grand scheme of things, Bitcoin is still in the first innings, in my opinion. And remember, guys, when and if, I would say just when, Bitcoin reaches a market cap of gold, that leaves the price of Bitcoin at $500,000 per coin. That's a lot. So just try to get to just one, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Moving on to a topic that is very, very unpopular with Bitcoiners. And I'll say it here on the show, guys. I like Peter's podcast. And I know that a lot of people don't agree with his business decisions and whatnot, but I'm a fan of Peter's podcast. And there's a thing that Peter said the other day on Twitter. This isn't the tweet itself, but he said that in developing countries, really what people are opting into is stable coins, specifically dollar tethers or tether dollars. There's a small percentage of people, particularly the wealthy people in those countries, that are opting into Bitcoin. Now, why is this happening? Well, it's obviously because of Bitcoin's volatility. But I believe over time, stable coins provide it's really a stepping stone into the inevitable conclusion of it's really Bitcoin. It's really Bitcoin, the currency that I want to use. So it's a step in the right direction in that sense, because people are choosing to opt out of their local fiat currencies. And they're really not opting into dollars per se. They're opting into a crypto version of dollar that is really managed by Bitfinex and the Tether company. So, it is the dollar, right? But it's not really the dollar, right? And I think this is something that government, specifically the US government, is totally aware of. And they would obviously want control of people using dollars. So I think that their next target is going to be stablecoins. This is something that they've mentioned in a report called The Future of Money and Payments that was released by the US Treasury. They said the future of money and payments is stablecoins, payment platforms like PayPal and Cash App and all that stuff, and central bank digital currencies, right? So I think that they inevitably will go after stablecoins. I think that they'll be successful in the sense because stablecoins are inherently centralized. There is a metaphorical head to chop off, right? So I think Peter really hit the nail on the head here when he said, for most people in developing countries, particularly high inflation countries, buying Bitcoin is a privilege. Accessing dollars is a necessity. And I can attest to that as someone who has whose heritage is from Venezuela, right? People like dollars. What happens when a country endures hyperinflation? They dollarize. Some countries have skipped this altogether, like Ecuador and El Salvador, where they just said, let's just get rid of our local currencies and let's outsource our monetary policy and let's adopt the dollar. But El Salvador is very interesting because they put Bitcoin as legal tender next to the dollar. And I think over time, it's going to show that Bitcoin is a superior money. I also have a clip for you guys of a little bit of an update. Kathy Wood has been making the rounds. We played a clip from you guys from the Coin Stories podcast, Natalie's podcast. Highly recommend it. It's great. And here she is on Legacy Corporate Media, and they're asking her about the spot Bitcoin ETF. What's going on with the SEC? Why are they delaying it? And let's see what Kathy Wood has to say, because apparently there's been a change in tune. Let's check it out.
Like the SEC is going to be forced to approve a spot Bitcoin ETF. What, if any, communications have you had with the SEC about your application? Where are we in this whole thing?
Well, it was publicized and disclosed. I think it was last week that we had responded to the SEC's request for information around our Bitcoin filing. And we responded, and that's basically all we can say. I think many people think the fact that the SEC chose to ask questions is a change in behavior. And therefore, I do think hopes are rising that a number of Bitcoin ETFs will be approved.
Yeah, my understanding is the court now is going to issue a mandate about how to enforce their decision here to the SEC, and their SEC is going to basically follow that mandate. Everybody is assuming at this point that they'll probably approve most of the Bitcoin ETFs by the end of the year. That's a reasonable assumption at this point. They lost the court case. They chose not to appeal it at this point.
Right. And I do believe maybe the reason they're saying by the end of the year, early next year, I know our final deadline on this filing is January 10th. And so, and I think we're first in line. But as you say, a number of Bitcoin ETFs could be approved at the same time.
Now,
So I actually released a poll on my Twitter. I asked everybody, and it was like, I think almost 1,000 people replied. And I said, when do you think the spot Bitcoin ETF is going to be approved? And the general consensus was, I said 2023, 2024, 2025, and don't give a fuck. To give all the Bitcoiners credit on Bitcoin Twitter, the second most popular option was don't give a fuck, which is awesome, because you should really truly be buying real Bitcoin, taking Bitcoin to self-custody. An ETF is not your keys, not your Bitcoin. But the general consensus, according to Twitter, or X.com, since the rebrand, is that a spot Bitcoin ETF would be approved in 2024. That's what most people believed. I think that there's such mounting pressure on Gary Gensler that I think that they're delaying the inevitable, and it's so clear at this point that it is politically motivated that they're delaying it, that it's like, I don't think that they could hold that door for significant amount of time, specifically if there's an election coming up next year as well. If the Republicans win the presidential election, there's a lot more and again, we're bipartisan, guys. It's not red versus blue. It's green versus orange. Party of freedom, Bitcoin, prosperity, opportunity, optimism versus party of green, central bank digital currencies, nihilism, slavery, poverty, all that stuff. That being said, if the Republicans do get back in power, in terms of the presidency, I think that there's a much higher probability of the ETF getting approved a lot quicker. Anyways, that being said, I want to get your guys' takes on both things because we did cover two things. So first of all, the adoption of dollars in developing countries versus the adoption of Bitcoin, specifically the adoption of stable coins. So Opti, what's your take on that? And then we'll move on to Bill.
Yeah, first, that documentary by Peter was actually very good. I watched it yesterday. Actually, truly enjoyed it. I think he's doing a great job. It was great production. Second, I am not a fan of stablecoins personally, first and foremost. You know, I say it all the time. I did not come to Bitcoin. I did not become a Bitcoiner to put petrodollars on my blockchains. But I see why people are drawn to them, as we kind of touched on it already. You know, stablecoins seem stable until they aren't. And of course, I just look at it as the inevitable progression from bad currencies into Bitcoin, because we all know all roads lead to Bitcoin. And hey, for better or worse, we're dealing with human psychology here. And the dollar seems stable. The dollar is the best shitcoin in regards to traditional shitcoins. And if you're in a bad currency like the Argentine peso, then of course you're going to go to a harder currency first, which is obviously the dollar. And then as we know, you know, the dollar system in countries outside of the US, it's incredibly hard to get dollars in your native currency. So of course, for better or worse, you know, stable coins have offered an improvement on the U.S. dollar system, the payment system that is the U.S. dollar, and it is Tether. And so as much as us Bitcoiners like lose our mind and pull our hairs out, and we're wondering why people don't become Bitcoiners right away because it's obviously the best alternative, we know that stable coins they seem very familiar to the average person. It's like, yeah, okay, our money's already digital. Of course, I'm going to go do the dollar. The Bitcoin standard seems very risky at this point, but moving forward, I believe that will obviously lessen and more people will wake up to Bitcoin, especially when you consider the inflation rates of the dollar. So I think the point here is it's more of a psychological point, because I hit this wall all the time when I talk about Bitcoin to friends and strangers, and they always say the same thing. They say, like, you know, I don't have any savings. Like I don't have any money to speculate. Whether they believe Bitcoin is a speculation and investment, or as we like to look at it, as savings, the point still remains that most people are struggling right now to survive. They're living paycheck to paycheck. And it does seem like a mental hurdle to be like, oh, now I have to put some money that I don't have into something that may or may not go up and down. Like, what is going on? And of course, we say the party line of like, you can buy literally a penny or a dollar, you know, but it just goes to show that the revolution is savings. And whether that's saving in dollars or saving in Bitcoin, like, people just don't save at all. We have been inundated with the Keynesian ideology that you need to spend and make the money, make your currency, you know, revolve through the economy, the velocity of money, et cetera, et cetera. And all of us Bitcoiners that are hodling, is like, guys, it's really as easy as saving. Like, Bitcoin is so easy. It's so easy to be a Bitcoiner. All you have to do is save in Bitcoin. The hard part is the emotional, behavioral, mental change that you will have to go through to know why you are hodling, to you know, put some aside for your future self, pay your future self, as a lot of us Bitcoiners like to talk about. But again, people are struggling. And the more that governments print money, the more people will struggle, the higher inflation will become. And it really just goes to show that what we're doing here is really an education revolution. Like, people need to understand about money, about good money, about bad money, about savings versus spending. And it really starts with saving. And so, you know, I don't fault people in like Argentina or the digital South that have, or even in the first world, that are wondering, like, yeah, I don't have any money right now. Like, what do you want? Like, I'm trying to buy groceries and you want me to put money into a, you know, a speculative asset. Like, Bitcoin still seems risky to most people. So I don't really fault them. Most people haven't put in the time that we have to understand Bitcoin. And so this is just the slow, natural progression of people going from bad currencies to good currencies. And of course, we believe Bitcoin is the best currency. We believe everyone should have a savings in Bitcoin. And this is just a matter of time. This is just a matter of exposure to Bitcoin, having multiple touch points to Bitcoin. And as we move forward and people realize the harsh lessons that stablecoins aren't stable, they will start to figure out how to get some Bitcoin. It's almost like the idea of Safety Noe says, Bitcoin will be adopted like gunpowder. It'll be a necessity. And so people are learning that they need to find alternatives. And in time, they will all inevitably end up on Bitcoin. So, it is what it is. We have Wine, one of our friends, and he helps us do stuff on the back end. He was in Argentina and he's like, yeah, man, there's a huge stablecoin market out here. And I try to talk to them about Bitcoin and they're like, yeah, I know about Bitcoin, but it just seems so difficult to get on Bitcoin. And so I think it's just a process of people learning about Bitcoin, about good money, and then of course finding easier and better ways to onboard people and for people to get Bitcoin. Because I mean, if you guys watch that documentary, like there's a black market for dollars. Like it's not easy for them to get dollars, and this is basically the status quo around the world. For us, it's very easy to get dollars. For us, it's very easy for us to get Bitcoin, but it's not that simple for people. And of course, we got to remember, people are just trying to survive. They're trying to make ends meet. And right now, for better or worse, we're still in a bear market. So it's incredibly difficult to get people onboarded to Bitcoin because we all have that PTSD of like, man, I can't put my rent money, my grocery money, the money I need for my children to survive in a quote unquote extremely volatile currency like Bitcoin. So I don't fault them. I think this is the natural progression from bad money to good money. And it goes in steps, like people are used to dollars. They're used to their dollars being digital. Most people are familiar with gold, and it's only a matter of time until everyone figures out that all roads lead to Bitcoin, and they will be on the Bitcoin standard in due time. So, I don't think this should be such a contentious, hot topic. It's just like we're dealing with human psychology, guys, and we're not going to reinvent the wheel here. People need to move slowly. I've been using the frogs and boiling water meme a lot recently, but in reverse. Like this is how we orange pill people, guys, is slowly but surely inching them towards the Bitcoin standard.
100%. That's a really good take. Bill, what's your take on everything?
No, I love what Opti said. I think that we live in a very untrusting environment now. Where's the truth? Where do we find the truth? And when you're in a bear market and when Bitcoin has the degree of volatility that it does, folks look at the volatility, and when they're confronted with an enormous universe of scams and things that they've seen 2008, they see SBF, that they see the war in Iraq, weapons of mass destruction. Were there any? No, there weren't. And so many things that you take for granted or that maybe the authorities want you to take for granted, and then you find they're complete lies. Then you have folks trying to make ends meet, and they're confronted with something called Bitcoin that they cannot conceptualize or understand. It takes them a while to figure out and work through that. And regrettably, early on in the tsunami of Bitcoin, early on, the information is just not there. And so you're going to have slow progression until people start catching on. So it's going to take a while.
100%, 100%. I think it's a generational thing, and it's an educational thing, and it really falls down to us, the individual, to really educate people. Bill said that he was orange pilled by this podcast, right? Take agency, share Bitcoin content, be that Bitcoin evangelist in your family and your community, and really get that message out there. It's not left versus right. It's really, green versus orange, right? So really get that message out there. Anyways, guys, I saw someone mention that Start9 kicks ass. Start9 does kick ass. That if you don't run your own personal Bitcoin node, you're trusting someone else's Bitcoin node. So it's important to run your own node. I personally recommend the Start9. That's what I use myself. They have a sweet deal, by the way, on the Start9 Pure, which is their flagship product, the server Pure. There's a promo code down below, 18% off the server pure, and they already discounted it, so you can get yourself one if you guys want. If you're not running your own node, you're trusting someone else's, I recommend Start9. That's what I use. That's what Opti uses. That's what Simply Bitcoin uses. All right, everybody, let's get to the news. Let's check it out.
The Daily News.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation Devices. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US. It's fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a simple feature phone. So you will know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes. Experience the peace of mind that comes with taking ownership of your own keys. After a massive sellout during Bitcoin Miami 2023, the Passport is back in stock at foundationdevices.com. Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, completely air gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. If you're thinking about getting your Bitcoin off exchanges, this is the one for you. Check out the Passport link in the show notes below to learn more. All right, guys, literally, I made it super easy for you guys. You got to get yourself a Passport hardware wallet, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. It's completely open source. It's absolutely beautiful. They really pay attention to the design. They also pay attention to the security. It's a hardware wallet that I recommend, that I personally use. Get yourself a Passport by Foundation Devices. You can scan the QR code on your screen. It will take you directly to the Passport Foundation Devices website. All right, everybody, no more delay. So this is Youssef. He is, like I said, the founder of Paxful. I don't know if they're still around, but I know that he stepped away.
They're still around, but he's not a part of it anymore.
He's not a part of it anymore. So this is something that he tweeted out not too long ago, where he said KYC at a whole new level. I read you guys this in the beginning of the show. I'm going to read it to you guys again. By January 6th, every UK citizen will have to take a test to buy Bitcoin. I'm going to read that again because it's like, I'm like, this is real. By January 6th, every UK citizen will have to take a test to buy Bitcoin. What if Bitcoiners, Bitcoin exchanges started like actually making their users take a test on fiat? It is a 6-page quiz that will not be easy and is designed to get you to give up. If you pass, there will be a 48-hour cooling period before you could actually buy. I'm very curious about what those questions are. And here are some of the rules, by the way. The new rules also require exchanges to limit offerings to only high net worth investors, quote unquote, sophisticated investors. Have some kind of certification, right? It goes on to say, when determining whether a retail client has the necessary knowledge to understand the risks involved in relation to a qualifying crypto asset, a firm should consider asking the client questions that cover at least the matters in 1 to 12. Firms may need to ask additional or alternative questions to ensure that the retail client has the necessary knowledge to understand the risks involved in relation to the specific type of qualifying crypto asset. What about the risks of fiat? Doesn't the UK has like 8 to 10% inflation? I mean, I've shown you this website many times, guys, because it is like I think it speaks for itself. It's so insane. If you've been, let's go to the British pound, right? If you've been saving in the British pound over the last 5 years, if you've been saving in Bitcoin, the British pound has actually gotten 79% cheaper. Over a 3-year time scale, it's gotten 62% cheaper. On a 1-year time scale, it's gotten 27% cheaper. Not to mention that houses on a 5-year time scale at the bottom of a bear market have gotten cheaper. On a 3-year time scale, houses have gotten 56% cheaper. So like, again, framing is important. What is really the risk? The numbers speak for themselves. The risk is people saving in fiat. Like that is what's like actually hurting people. I think this is actually malicious. So it goes on to say the role of the business offering and marketing the qualifying crypto asset and the scope of its services, including what the business does and does not do on behalf of its clients. The nature of the client's rights and obligations with the business, in particular, the nature of the legal and beneficial ownership of the qualifying crypto asset and the risk associated with those rights. That the client can lose all of the money they invest in a qualifying crypto asset, right? The potential complexity of investments in qualifying crypto assets and the associated difficulty of understanding the risks of the investment. That the performance of many qualifying crypto assets can be highly volatile, and that the value of an investment in a qualifying crypto asset can fall as quickly as it can rise. The risk of losing money or any qualifying crypto asset purchased as a result of operational risks, the risks to any management or administration of the client's investment in the event of the business becoming insolvent or otherwise failing. Now, here's the thing though, guys, right? Is that here, once again, you have an example of crypto giving Bitcoin a bad name. Bitcoin is not crypto. Crypto is not Bitcoin. The numbers speak for themselves. If you buy Bitcoin, earn Bitcoin, or mine Bitcoin, and take that said Bitcoin into self-custody, you are significantly wealthier than if you used the British pound. If you use the British pound, even at the bottom of a bear market, you are down 79% compared to Bitcoin on a 5-year scale. Why? Because there's an infinite amount of fiat and there's a limited supply of Bitcoin. So again, forgive me for being skeptical of this test. Like they use the guise of you're too stupid to make your own decision. We are protecting you. But in reality, guess what? They're not protecting anyone. They're hurting people from allowing people the ability to opt out of their money. And this reminds me again of a passage from The Sovereign Individual. New technologies will allow the holders of wealth to bypass the national monopolies that have issued and regulated money in the modern period. Their importance for controlling the world's wealth will be transcended by mathematical algorithms that have no physical existence. In the new millennium, cyber money controlled by private markets will supersede fiat money issued by governments. Lacking their accustomed scope to tax inflate, governments even in traditional civilized civil countries will turn nasty. Businesses that offer services that facilitate the realization of autonomy by individuals will be subject to infiltration, sabotage, and disruption. Doesn't that sound familiar? Right? So like, I'm sorry guys. It's like Elizabeth Warren. Like, it's like always under the guise of the public good. But like, when you look at the numbers, like when you actually look at the data, not to mention their history of whether they've actually done things for the public good or not, they don't necessarily have a very good track record. They printed an ungodly amount of money that's made the prices of real estate and assets go through the roof, meaning the poor get poorer because they don't have the means to save in assets. They save in fiat, and the rich get richer. So you can come to two conclusions, right? Like either they truly believe like, we know what's best for people and we're just trying to protect people from scams. You can make that argument when it comes to crypto, right? Like I believe altcoins are pump and dumps. I truly believe that's what altcoins are designed to enrich their founders. Like I truly believe that. Why? Because every single altcoin that was created after Bitcoin's inception, the founders fundamentally knew from the beginning that that altcoin had value. When Satoshi created Bitcoin, he created it as an experiment. He didn't know that it was going to have value. And most importantly, Satoshi walked away. He said, okay, I created this. I'm gone. I'm leaving. Right? So yeah, man, like I'm just like, I am forgive me, guys, if I am skeptical of the UK's government, the UK government forcing people to pass a test to buy Bitcoin. Like, it infers a lot of things. It's like, you're too stupid to make your own decisions. Use our money, but our money is currently debasing. I think the last inflation rate data coming out of the UK is like 8 to 10%. Like, come on now. Like, at what point are you going to come to the conclusion that they're doing this on purpose because they want people using their money? Like at what point can you come to that, you know? And Opti and I have gone through this rabbit hole for the last year where we went from, no, they just don't know any better. And then we started to become jaded, because so many things, Caitlin Long's bank being declined, the SEC's very suspicious delay of a spot Bitcoin ETF, even though there's tremendous amount of market interest, even coming from one of the largest asset managers in the world. The fact that Bitcoin became legal tender of a sovereign country, like, forget about all that. You know, Bitcoin is a problem. And not to mention, and I think this is really the smoking gun, which is the attacks on Bitcoin, not only by the legacy corporate media, but the narratives that they use. Like, for example, like, Bitcoin is boiling the oceans. Bitcoin is using, we read you an article from the New York Times yesterday. I like literally go back to that show. They were trying to make the connection that somehow a Bitcoin mining operation in Wyoming was a threat to America's nuclear arsenal. Like, what if it was like a gaming facility next to, you know, America's nuclear arsenal? I bet you they wouldn't say anything. So I think this has to do with the fact that Bitcoin is a competition to their monopoly on the creation of money. I think it's as simple as that. I don't think it's rocket science. No one's better than their incentives. And then this leads me to my last and final thought. The people that are tasked with so-called regulating Bitcoin are also the people that have the most to lose if Bitcoin succeeds, right? So anyways, that's my take. I want to get Bill's thoughts, especially with his military background, and then we'll move on to Opti.
Hey, you know, I wish it was a 3-hour show because I have so much to say. But let me just tell you, at the end of the day, I joined the military to protect the nation, to serve the nation, and to defend it. This is why I joined. 23 years later, I was selected for higher level command. I turned it down and I retired. I left the military because this was steps in my awakening consciousness and trying to find out what are we doing there. So related to what you're saying, Nico, I come at this from a military planning perspective. In the Army, I was a tanker. I was an armor officer. So the M1 Abrams tank, I was an officer there. I also was a operational planner. And so part of my Army life was learning to plan for counterinsurgency operations, planning military operations, etc. Went to Iraq twice, once working for the second rankingest general in all of Iraq, Lieutenant General Odierno. This was during the surge in Iraq when everything was going crazy. The violence was through the roof. And I was privileged to be able to see under the hood exactly what's going on. My second tour to Iraq up in the Nineveh Desert, stopping terrorists from infiltrating in from the Syrian border to blow themselves up in Baghdad and other places. But throughout my time in the military, I started having questions and wondering, look, I joined to defend the nation. Why am I doing a peacekeeping operation in Macedonia, north of Greece, working for the UN? How is this serving our national interests? Okay, I go on in time. Now I'm in a peacekeeping operation in Bosnia, right after the Bosnian War there and a lot of genocide, etc. And the questions continue. What am I doing in Bosnia holding the peace here? And then 9/11 occurs. And then my personal science fair project was to deploy to Iraq or Afghanistan and to get these questions answered. Are we actually defending the nation? What are we actually doing over here? And before I deployed, I made commitment to myself, red lines beyond which I would not pass, because I didn't join the army to kill women and children. I wasn't going to do that. It wasn't going to happen. And so I established these red lines beyond which I would not go past. And I went there on fact-finding mission for myself to see what's going on. Nico, Opti, at the end of the day, what I realized was, no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I was there working for arguably the top general there in Iraq. No weapons of mass destruction. Hey, guess what? No Al-Qaeda in Iraq either. Al-Qaeda came to Iraq when we occupied there after Afghanistan and suddenly shifted to Iraq. Then Al-Qaeda comes down and is attracted to American forces, coalition forces, to attack us. But then you start seeing again and again things that you were told, things that the authorities tell you, things that the government tells you, they're not accurate and they're not true. And so when I'm starting to hear about Bitcoin now from my son-in-law, then I read Saifedean's books on the Bitcoin and the fiat standard, and I'm deep diving Bitcoin to really analyze this. And when the facet, the lens that I come at Bitcoin at, directly speaking to what you're talking about, Nico, is it's not this idea that the state will come to have a coexistence, a peaceful coexistence with Bitcoin, I think is naive. I think it's not accurate at all. The thing that has empowered the United States of America, certainly Great Britain before it, emergent from World War I, and then solidified in World War II when they realized, my goodness, fiat currency unpegged from gold, being able to just create it ex nihilo out of nothing, this enables and facilitates perpetual warfare. And that seems jaded. And I didn't want to think that in the beginning because I love my nation. I wanted to protect my nation. But you know what? I didn't join the army for imperialism. And I have to tell you, I really don't, it never sat well with me. I lived in India for a year when I was young. I lived in Mexico City for 3 years before high school. What really and I love America, but what doesn't sit well with me is when you would always hear this politically and et cetera, folks saying United States is the greatest nation on the earth. I hate that because I'm living in Mexico. What if I live in Mexico? I'm proud of Mexico. And I hear someone else saying the United States is the greatest in the world. What about my country? What about India? What about, everyone has a place that they're from. And so the arrogance, I cannot stand. And so what happens is you get to this point where you realize that your nation isn't defending itself. It's expanding. It has a world reserve currency as leverage to expand its influence and power worldwide. And so here comes this upstart entity, Bitcoin, that's threatening to unsettle the power base for the imperial state, the imperial fiat Frankenstein monster. And if Bitcoin just remained another run-of-the-mill crypto kind of asset, yada, yada, crap coin or whatever, okay, then it's under the radar. The state doesn't care about it. But Bitcoin's popularity is exploding. Bitcoin's value is increasing. More people are understanding about it. So now it's hitting the radar screen. What that means is you're going to find the state, I'm going to call it the empire, and its vassal states now starting to take notice of this upstart monetary system that's threatening to diminish its power. And so this is the explanatory rationale for what you see with the legislation, with Elizabeth Warren, in London, on and on. This is the explaining dynamic because the state is taking notice now. And it's not going to peacefully coexist with Bitcoin. So my point, my major thesis is, as Bitcoiners, we need to teach and get the orange signal out so people understand Bitcoin better. But then we have to be very wise. We have to be exceedingly wise at determining how we move forward at this point. If we're naive, thinking that eventually the incentives will win and the government will realize that it can't kill it, so it has to exist with it, it will not do this. It will declare war against Bitcoin. And if we've been naive, then we will lose. And I wrote an article, it was in bitcoinmagazine.com, about this very thing, that the power of Bitcoin is it's permissionless. It doesn't ask permission of the state to live. But there are other things the state can do to try to neutralize it. And don't think that the government writ large, the state writ large, they're bumbling. It's a bumbling bureaucracy. But there are some very, very shrewd people within it that will learn and strategically figure out how can we strangle it in the grave. I'll stop there for some oxygen in case you have some thoughts.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that actually reminds me of Corey Clipson, CEO of Swan's article, The Race to Avoid the War. And I just kind of want to read you guys the first passage of it. He says, "We Bitcoiners are in a race, perhaps the most important race we will ever run. We are racing against time to drive the adoption of Bitcoin as fast as we can. You're racing towards a future in which the U.S. government never coordinates a concerted attack against Bitcoin or Bitcoiners. This is a race to avoid the war." Right. And it is an adoption race. We have to get that message out there because if not, you know, I agree with you, Bill. And unfortunately, like, this is a very, very hard pill to swallow. Right. And what I think you're referring to is the administrative state. People call it the deep state. I don't call it the deep state anymore. But essentially what the administrative state is it's an unelected bureaucracy that remains in power regardless of who gets elected into office. And they benefit tremendously from the money printer, right? And what's happened over the decades, right, and you mentioned the word Frankenstein, it's really Frankenstein the incentives, where I don't think it's a government by the people for the people. I think it's a government by the people. It's a government by the government for the government, right? I really have seen that, really come to light over the last, couple of years or so. And it's really, really scary, man, especially, as an immigrant coming to the US, I was, promised that this is the land of freedom. And what I'm seeing is it's like, who are we really ruled by? That's really the question. Like, do these elections really matter? Like, who is really in control, And those are just all very, very kind of important questions. But I do also see a great awakening, so to speak. I do see people really waking up and start saying, wait a second, that is really strange, like, what's going on there? Why are they, what's up with the endless wars? Why are they sending hundreds of billions of dollars to, these countries to fight wars while there's homeless people in the streets in America? Like, what is going on here? This is so strange, And then you start asking very simple questions, right? But I think it all boils down to the fact that, again, the incentives are not aligned. As long as the Federal Reserve exists, as long as the government has the ability to create money for free that the rest of us peasants have to work for, I think the incentives will never be aligned, right? I think the solution here is a peaceful one, is opting out. And then by opting out, you inevitably, what happens is the inevitable separation of money and state, right? As more and more people wake up to the reality that the non-state currency that which is Bitcoin is just better than the dollar. It's just better, right? But anyways, that really falls down to us. Anyways, Opti, you want to hit it real quick before we get to
I'll hit it real quick. First, some of the points on that UK stuff. I find it ironic that the deadline is January 6th. Of course, you guys are all familiar with what happened in the US. Second, a 6-page test. It's almost as long as the white paper. Absolutely incredible. And then that one point of limited to high net worth individuals. Again, the UK just wants the average peasant to have fun staying poor. Gatekeeping freedom from the people. It's absolutely disgusting. And it kind of goes to a thesis I've been saying for a while here on the show, is any direct attack on Bitcoin is bad PR. So, of course, they're not going to directly attack Bitcoin. They're just going to put roadblocks up and just hopefully gatekeep and gaslight the individuals out there and do whatever they can to hamper adoption. So that's exactly what we're seeing happen. There won't be direct attacks on and off ramps yet, but eventually we will get there. And this just goes to show why you need Bitcoin in the first place. You know, they keep using the same ideologies of protection for the common good. And this is why it's so nefarious. Like, it seems like they are really doing good for people that aren't in tune with everything that we know, but it really does more harm than protects any person out there. And that's why it's so disgusting. It's kind of what Nico said. And I was hoping he was going to go this route with that meme where it's like, the people here to protect you from Bitcoin are literally the very people you need protection from. So, like, you know, couldn't make up. Obviously, we knew this was going to happen. I really do believe that Bitcoin is a peaceful revolution, but I know that the Great Leviathan is not going to just give up that power easily, and they're going to do whatever they can. At first, it will be more sleight of hand, and then once they really get more and more desperate, we will see direct attacks on Bitcoin and Bitcoiners in general. So, you know, let's just hope that we do win this war and we get to as many people adopting Bitcoin, obviously safely, and they know why they're holding Bitcoin and not just fumbling into the price. But that's just what we do here, and just try to educate people and get more people from YouTube and stuff.
100%. And again, like, I just want to emphasize, everybody, this is a peaceful revolution. This is not kinetic. This is information narrative trench warfare on the battlegrounds of the internet. Remember, politics is downstream from culture, right? We have to win that culture war. We really have to, you know, really explain to people, whether they're progressives or conservatives, like, guys, like, your economic woes, the social woes, like, the root cause is broken money, broken world. And I really do believe that Bitcoin has a really good shot at fixing the world, and by fixing the incentive structure. And I think the incentive structure is currently not aligned. Anyways, I want to bring up our sponsor, Kaboom Racks. They are the best place to buy Bitcoin miners. You're looking for the best deals, the best prices, repair and hosting services all in one place? Your answer is Kaboom Racks. They are literally the most trusted place to buy and sell mining equipment. You definitely want to check it out. You want to buy mining equipment? You can check out their inventory on Telegram and connect with one of the members of their sales team. They make purchasing products easy and transparent. You want to sell? You can access their vast network of domestic and international customer base, where you could sell your mining equipment, and Kaboom Racks will help facilitate that. So you could scan the QR code, or you could check the link in the video description and get yourself a Bitcoin ASIC today and help support the Bitcoin hash rate. Remember, the higher the Bitcoin hash rate, the higher Bitcoin is, the higher security Bitcoin is theoretically. And that's why you want to get yourself a Bitcoin ASIC. Anyways, everybody, let's move on to the culture. We got a lot to talk about. Let's check it out.
The Daily Culture.
Brought to you by SwanBitcoin.com. Swan is the best way to build your Bitcoin stack with automated Bitcoin savings plans and instant purchases, serving clients of any size from $10 to $10 million. We love Swan because they incentivize self-custody and dollar cost averaging. What are you waiting for? Visit SwanBitcoin.com today.
All right, Opti, what are we talking about today, brother?
Yeah, so guys, you know, this is the culture. We usually feature our guest. I usually like to start with the rabbit hole story, but Bill kind of gave it to us already. So we'll jump to the second portion of what we were going to talk about. And before we start, I usually like to let our guests tell me kind of what's been top of mind for them, and so we can talk about it. And Bill basically told me in the beginning, he's like, you know, what I really want to talk about is what you guys have been covering a lot on the show recently. I will frame it as just the information propaganda war against Bitcoin. And so, Bill, I'll just give you the platform. What is it exactly that you see, and you can add on to what you were just talking about in the news segment?
And please stop me, jump in at any time if I ramble.
Go rant. They like the rants.
Well, at the end of the day, I just think that as I see and watch the shows, not just yours, but interact with a lot of Bitcoiners, it's natural. I think that there is a mindset, again, of peaceful coexistence. We stack sats, the incentives are going to win out. And then Bitcoin will fix this, and we'll move to more of a Bitcoin maybe standard, maybe not 100%, but that Bitcoin will really win out. As a military planner, I am hardwired to look at the worst case scenario and then walk my way backwards. And when I look, I try to look at the worst case scenario and see, how is this going to fail? I took about 1.5 years to study Bitcoin and to deep dive it before I even ventured in and purchased some sats, because I wanted to make sure I knew what I was getting into, and I wanted to disprove it. But I couldn't disprove it. And I compared it to other cryptocurrencies. No comparison whatsoever. Okay, this is good. So it met my test there, and I'm still open to challenges. But when I looked and I saw what our military is doing overseas, I was disillusioned, wildly disillusioned. I have seen firsthand overseas incredible national arrogance. I have seen tragic depravity. I've also seen incredible love. I've seen incredible selflessness and wonderful troopers over there doing the best they could, working the hardest they could to do the best for Iraqis. I was in Iraq. But this showed me that it doesn't matter how hard you work. If the assumptions under which you're working are flawed, you can work very hard and still lose. And now, how does that apply to Bitcoin? If I don't understand money, if I don't understand it, and I had to learn about money in the first place, I realized that I can't understand Bitcoin unless I figure out money. So I had to deep dive there. If you don't understand the dynamics by which we go to war and the assumptions there, you can work so hard overseas and try to serve your nation, and you can still fail, as we did in Afghanistan, as we did in Iraq. Financially, if you don't understand money, you can work your fiat job so hard and try to save money and invest it, yada, yada, and still be wrecked. 2008 is an example. And so in that regard, I wanted to bring a military analysis to Bitcoin so we can be lucid, clear-eyed, sober, and not so excited and amped up because we found Bitcoin that we lose the context. We don't realize that we're in a monetary war. Tyrants, emperors, kings, they do not give up power. They don't give it up gracefully. You know, we say a peaceful revolution. I want peace. I would love, it's fine. Keep the fiat system here, but allow Bitcoin to flourish side by side. I'd be happy with that. But I don't think this is going to happen, because the essence of the United States that we're living under, and let's just call it the empire, and we'll include Europe in that because that's kind of, you know, they fall right into line with whatever the United States says, the world reserve currency holder. The bottom line is our military budget is larger than the next 9 countries combined. Now, how is this? How is this, number one, necessary? How is this even righteous or just? Our military budget 9 times bigger, or bigger than the next 9 nations combined, their military budgets. That's unconscionable. Is that really necessary to keep us safe? Well, when I deploy twice to Iraq and see what I see, it's not keeping us safe. We make enemies. An army of occupation, when you have your nose in everyone's business overseas, then they start to resent you. Who are you to come over here and tell us how to be democratic, for Pete's sake? And so the bottom line is, why the war in Ukraine? And now all of a sudden, when support for that's starting to go by the wayside a little bit, suddenly there's a war flaring up somewhere else in Israel with Hamas and Gaza. Okay, you know, at least as a military planner, timing is very important to me. It doesn't mean everything is settled just because of the timing, but timing is curious to me. I take note of the timing of things. We're coming up on an election cycle. Support for Ukraine is waning. The military industrial beast needs fed. And so why do I keep seeing wars spring up all the time that we are interested in and throwing our support behind when we have so much in this nation that we could use our taxpayer money for, that I'd be more inclined to have my taxpayer monies going to help out folks in this nation. But this is part of the problem here, is the beast and the folks who empower and direct the beast are directly incentivized to keep that beast in a state of warfare. So 9/11, real convenient. Have the Patriot Act, never been rescinded yet. It was supposed to only be temporary. But the Patriot Act is still in full force and is expanded upon. So now we're going to move on to CBDCs, so that everything I do financially, the state's going to be able to monitor and analyze and then block it if they wish. Now, I'm not for that at all. I love Bitcoin. I want a non-KYC avenue to Bitcoin at all times, permissionless, because the only way that you liberate yourself from the behemoth, from the Leviathan, is it has to be permissionless. It can't be a mother may I system, because when you go through a mother may I system, now you have to take a test in Great Britain. Now you have to ask permission to buy a certain amount of Bitcoin that then can be tracked and will be taxed exorbitantly, yada, yada, on and on. No, thank you. This doesn't work for me. This is going to be a problem for me. But I've seen what the state does. I've deployed twice on its behalf and then had to opt out because I joined the military to defend the nation, to serve selflessly, but not to imperialize. And so as I look at Bitcoin now, how do we move forward if these assumptions are true? This is my project. This is what I really want to look at. If I was Nayib Bukele, I just wrote an article concerning El Salvador, what they might want to think about as they move forward. But hey, the global South has reason to fear interference. Let's just put it that way: interference by the empire, don't they? There have been quite a few coups d'états, quite a few juntas down there that we weren't exactly uninvolved in. And so if you have this nation in Central America, who are you, El Salvador? And now you're suddenly taking the superpower to school, showing them how to embrace hard money that enriches the citizenry. Wow, what a crazy concept, that you'd actually work for your people, that you would go break the spines of the gangs there that had their way for so long. By the way, study how these gangs came to power in the first place. And now this president down in this tiny Central American country is now going to shame and humiliate the United States. We can't have that. This is what I'd worry about. And I think that we have to look at this very lucidly and very sober, to be objective and not, what you might say, quixotic, wanting to believe the ideal state when the ideal state may not be very likely. Folks say that Bitcoin fixes this. Don't hate me. I don't want you to hate me, okay? I don't think it fixes a lot of things. And here's why. Maybe I'd like to caveat that phrase. In the United States, the idea of America was to fix certain things. So the separation of powers, they came off from this history of a tyrant, King George, who was dominating things and did not care about his subjects in the colonies. So we created a system of government with a separation of powers, with a Bill of Rights, with all these things to try to safeguard the sovereignty of the individual. Isn't that a shocker? Over time, it gets degraded and deteriorated. Well, at this point now, that was a political attempt to fix a larger problem, and it worked for a while. Never perfect this side of eternity. We're not looking for perfection. We're realists. But human nature, exactly right. I see here in the messages coming up, you're exactly right. Human nature is basically, in the minds of the founding fathers there who crafted the American idea, human nature is basically corrupt, not good. And it doesn't mean that people aren't and don't have the capacity for good, but it means that there's a propensity for corruption. There's a propensity in human nature for certain folks when they get power to seek more power and to have a lust for power, a lust for money. And so our form of government sought to put limitations on that for the benefit of as many folks as possible. Again, never perfect from the beginning. What Bitcoin does is it puts limitations and it helps limit the corruption that can occur in the monetary system. And that's wonderful. So if you have political restrictions, if you have monetary restrictions, now you're really making some great traction. You're making some great progress towards a wonderful situation, a wonderful environment for sovereign individuals, for people to live their lives, to work hard, but have something for the work that they do and not to be robbed. And this is where Nico and Opti, I so much appreciate that you say we don't want to get political. It's not red versus blue. I don't want to be political either in terms of, and we have to define what do you mean by political, but the very issues that we talk about are political issues, and there's no getting around it. The sovereignty of the issue. What is the proper, righteous limits that government should have with respect to us, with certain laws, with taxation, with the justice system, on and on. And these are decisions that you have to make in the political spectrum. And so I'm not a party person. Again, the founding fathers said, stay away from political parties because they degenerate and they consolidate power, and much evil comes from this. And so I'll pause there for air, gentlemen.
Man, bro, first of all, great. Absolutely beautiful. I love having Bitcoiners from all walks of life on the show because your experience in, and thank you for your service, by the way, your experience in the military gives you a very unique perspective because you went full circle, right? You believed, right? And then all of a sudden you started seeing cracks, right? I'm from the millennial generation, right? I can't even imagine what the Zoomers are going to go through, right? But it's like I see, and it's like there is no opportunity here. There in the fiat system. I'm not going to be able to own their own fiat propaganda. I call it the World Economic Forum, the Cantillionaire Conference, is even telling you you'll own nothing and be happy, right? So it's like, if it's like Bitcoin is the way out of this, and it's peaceful. It's like you're just opting out. You're not going and causing a conflict or anything like that. You're just saying like, look, like I understand your system. That's cool, but I'm gonna opt out. I'm gonna take my energy, my time out of that system because it's broken. It's not working for me. I'm not, you mentioned about, the first days in American history. And we have so many quotes from the founding fathers, literally warning about the dangers of paper money. And all of that has, it seems like it's been forgotten. We've forgotten the traditional American roots that I think really coalesce, like they're really linked with Bitcoin. Like I think Bitcoin and what the founding principles that this country was originally based on, right? They go hand in hand. I think if the founding fathers were around today, there'd be hardcore Bitcoiners, right? So yeah, man, I think you hit the nail on the head. That was such a great perspective, and thank you so much for coming on the show today, man. Because holy cow, that I'm at a loss for words. Opti, you want to chime in before we hit the meme review?
Well, I was just gonna say maybe we should avoid the meme review today. Let's dig into Bill's thinking a little more for another 10 minutes. I think that would do the show a little more justice.
Awesome. So before we do that, I do want to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors. Guys, check out Bitcoin 2024. It's going to be the largest Bitcoin conference on planet Earth. Opti and I will be there. It's going to be the largest Bitcoin celebration. It's not going to be in Miami. It's going to be in Nashville, Tennessee, the year of the halving, July 25th through the 27th. You don't want to miss it. For a GA ticket, you can get it for $349. For an industry pass, that will give you access to 3 days of the conference, including Industry Day. That's $849. And for a whale pass, you can get it for $4,749. Now, all that being said, you could take advantage of the promo code SIMPLY to get yourself a discount on the already discounted tickets to Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville, Tennessee, July 25th through the 27th, the year of the halving. All right, everybody. So let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, guys, I'll do a long meme review for tomorrow, but I feel like we would be doing a disservice to our audience if we went to the meme review today. So, Bill, we will give you the floor again, but we got a great question here. And considering your military background and what you were saying, that you're always going from the worst case scenario back to, where we are right now in the current moment. We got Opti's favorite bits of Chrissy. Shouts out to my boy trolling me. And he goes, Mr. Bill, what would a government attempt to do to stop/break Bitcoin? Like, what is your attack vectors? Like, what are you seeing and what are you concerned about? And then maybe, how do we protect ourselves?
Yeah, super great question. And this is the first thing I started writing about in the first article that I wrote. If I were the government and I wanted to stop it, warfare at the operational level is all about choke points. And so choke points is you can fight. Let's say we're going in the octagon. You can move all through the octagon. Your opponent can attack you from many different angles. Octagon is not real helpful. I want to fight in a room and I want a choke point, maybe a doorway, because I can limit the options of someone who's attacking me, limit it to a small space. So what are the vulnerabilities here? If I wanted to find the choke point for Bitcoin, okay, so I'm the government. I'm like, okay, you know what? I can't kill it. It's permissionless. I can't kill it. It's in cyberspace. It just keeps existing. I can't get in there. I can't hack it. I can't kill it. It exists. The blockchain, there's no way that I can go through, etc. But if this knucklehead here named Bill owns some Bitcoin, what could I do to neutralize why he's owning it in the first place? And so here's what I'd do. I'd say, okay, well, good. Bill can't do much with his Bitcoin when it stays in cyberspace. And right now, there's not enough merchants, there's not enough capability for him to spend it and just use it. Bitcoin transactions from Bill to merchants, et cetera, buy a car, buy food, et cetera. So what I'm going to do, he's got to take Bitcoin and he's got to transfer it into fiat, at least for now. So what I'm going to do is I analyze every way that Bill can move Bitcoin to fiat, and then I hit that. And that's the choke point that I hit. Because if I can strangle and isolate Bill's Bitcoin and keep it isolated in cyberspace, I've won. And not just Bill, but everyone else that owns Bitcoin. And so one critical target right off the bat will be the exchanges. Where do you sell your Bitcoin? Now, there are some other ways of transferring Bitcoin into fiat, your local fiat of choice, wherever you happen to be at. But quite often you have to go through certain entities that can be targeted by legislation, targeted by bureaucracy, targeted by KYC, targeted by any number of tools that the state has at its disposal. Okay, so now let me use that and let's do some kung fu on it. Let's do some judo and flip that. If I were technologically inclined, and I'm not a cypherpunk, I'm not gifted in this realm. But just as the existence of Bitcoin is permissionless, Bitcoin isn't asking anyone's permission to exist. It does, and you can't stop it. But the ability of transferring Bitcoin into fiat, that needs to be permissionless. How do we develop absolutely permissionless rails that no matter what, no state could stop it? This would be an area of innovation I think it's well worthwhile to explore. And there are movements in that realm, but this would be my first answer. And I know that was somewhat long, so I'll pause there for a minute, but it's attacking those rails of reentry, the rails that re-enter the fiat state.
Yeah, that's what I see happening as well. And it's kind of interesting because like once you become fully orange pilled, once you become a Bitcoiner, it's almost like, okay, yeah, stop the fiat, from Bitcoin to fiat on ramps and off ramps again. It's like, cool. Like I'm in Bitcoin already. Like I didn't want to go back anyways. So thank you very much. Now I'm just forcing my hand.
Now, if merchants worldwide or in your region would really start availing themselves of getting on a Bitcoin transaction standard, well, then that starts limiting that problem, and it really starts opening up a permissionless ecosystem for Bitcoin, which would be tremendous. But another thing, and you see it, Javier Milei, you see what happened with him. You see the state attacking, not just in the United States, but you see the World Bank, the IMF going after Bukele with loans. And he says, I don't want any more of your, IMF bondage. No, thank you. And yes, we're going to go for Bitcoin. You see Javier Milei attacked. You see, if you can identify those who are Bitcoining as well, then they can be targeted by the state in other ways to wreck them.
100%. And like, I just want to kind of tie this into today's news, right? You're speaking about the choke points, right? Clearly, like you see the clear choke point in my mind is the on and off ramps, right? And like with the news segment that we did today covering this test, that, ladies and gentlemen, is an example of them using a choke point. They are literally trying to say, hey, you have to pass a test before you can opt out into Bitcoin, right? So like I 100% agree, and guys, this is where the rise of peer-to-peer is so important. This is why you should be running your own. This is why you should literally leave no Bitcoin on exchanges whatsoever. Take all of that into self-custody. That's how you empower yourself. I had this pinned on the top of my profile for a very, very long time. I said, if enough people take self-custody, we will win, and there's nothing they could do about it, right? So we got to get to that point where enough people around the world, enough individuals around the world. Did we just get a Twitch chat, Opti? Oh my God, I think that's our first. Shout out to Valvez BTW. Hey, what's up? So we got some Twitchers in the house, which is awesome. Anyways, but yeah, man, this is definitely pretty crazy. I see Opti pulled something up.
Yeah, this is a meme by Beautyon. I highly recommend you guys read. Like, I think it's called Conway's Game of Life. It's on his Substack, but you can see what we're talking about here, guys. Like, I really like this visual here. The white would be people using fiat. The gray black dots would be the KYC AML zone of absorption. And then once you are in the Bitcoin network, in the black, you're using Bitcoin. What can they do? They can't stop you. And this is where we are. This is a transition. Yeah, it's a transition into the Bitcoin standard.
It's definitely a one-way door.
Maybe a word about the investment firms in BlackRock and how to view them for a moment.
Yeah, hit it.
Because as I look at this, I see a lot of optimism. Oh, the BlackRock, third largest economy in the world, Vanguard, Fidelity, all these other folks trying to get a spot Bitcoin ETF. This shows that the government essentially is going to yield to it because BlackRock is so tied into the government, the regulators, etc. I don't see it that way. Bottom line, I think that the reason why we're seeing such a delay and such an extenuation of the SEC making a ruling on it is because the SEC is caught between a rock and a hard place. These investment firms very much want a piece of the action, but the government writ large, which is not monolithic, and this is the thing, we call it the uniparty, but at the end of the day, there are granular divisions within the government as well.
No. And not only that, it is breaking. You can see it. You can see the rise of populism on the left and the right. For the first time in American history, you had a speaker ousted, right? So yeah, like it's the uniparty is there, but you can slowly start to see that their influence is starting to diminish. And I would say what's even more important is that it's being exposed for what it is, right? These are very tumultuous times. I truly believe in the theory of the fourth turning. We are living through our generation's version of a non-kinetic, so far, World War II, where, good times created weak men created hard times, and we're currently living that. And then hard times are creating strong men. Lessons of the past have been forgotten. And once again, as humanity, we are learning those lessons again. Anyways, this has been an amazing, amazing episode. Bill, this has been absolute treat and pleasure for you.
The honor is entirely mine.
I will say that right back at you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
I want to thank you again for orange pilling me. You did it. You brought me across that bridge. So I thank you for your service in educating that orange signal.
Well, it's an honor to be in the trenches.
Hey, Bill, jump in Twitter Spaces right now, and we'll continue the conversation.
Absolutely. Bill, it's an honor to be in the trenches with you, man, fighting the good fight, and I think we'll win this thing. But we have to be attentive and take agency, take action, and orange pill the people around you. Anyways, Bill, thank you so much for joining us on Simply Bitcoin Live. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thanks, Bill.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to smash that like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we provided you value. But the number one thing you could do to help push the peaceful Bitcoin revolution is share Bitcoin content. Don't share altcoin content. That's counterproductive. Share Bitcoin content. Don't be exclusive, be inclusive. Everyone has different tastes. So some people, like the bigger podcasts, some people like the Simply Bitcoin style, whatever floats your boat, it doesn't matter, right? The whole point is that we have to push this movement forward. We have to get more people to start asking the question, what is money? Why is my money stealing from me? Anyways, love you all. If you want to join the after party, you could join us on Twitter Spaces, which we co-host with our friends over at Swan Bitcoin. Best place to build your Bitcoin stack. Shout out to the best producer in the game, producer Jacob. Opti's going to be holding it down. Bill's going to be joining us as well. So if you want to join the Simply Bitcoin after party, join us on Spaces. We're going to be holding it down until 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In the meantime, love you guys, and we will see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. Peace out, y'all.
Guys, you already know the deal. This is a Bitcoin space by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Hopefully I can get Bill in here and we can keep this convo going. I do have a request by Larry Fink parody account. I don't know if I should let this up. And then I have someone here. Sir, you have me blocked. You have our account blocked and you're requesting to speak. So I think I'm going to